California just held a primary for governor, and nobody won. Not because the votes were rigged, not because the system broke, but because of a quiet little rule most people outside California have never even heard of. Here's the setup. California doesn't run its primary the way most states do. There's no separate Republican ballot, no separate Democratic ballot, no party gatekeeping who gets to face who in November. Every candidate, every party, all of them, get thrown onto the same ballot. Voters pick whoever they want, regardless of party. And then only the top two finishers, again regardless of party, move on to the general election. That's it, that's the whole game. It's called the jungle primary. And on June 3rd, 2026, it did exactly what it was designed to do. It created chaos, because according to NPR, the race for governor came out of that primary undecided. 2 Democrats and 1 Republican were locked in tight contention for those 2 precious slots. And until the final votes get counted, nobody knows which 2 names are actually going to be on the November ballot. Now think about what that really means. You could end up with a Democrat versus a Republican, the normal matchup you'd expect in a state this big. Or you could end up with 2 Democrats facing each other, with no Republican on the ballot at all. In a state where Democrats outnumber Republicans by millions, that second scenario isn't a fluke. It's a feature. So why does California do it this way? That's the part of the story that usually gets buried. Because the jungle primary wasn't some accident. It was engineered, voters approved it back in 2010, sold on the promise that it would push politics toward the middle. The pitch was simple. If everyone votes in the same primary, candidates can't just play to the hardcore base of their own party. They've got to appeal to independents, to crossover voters, to people who don't fit neatly into a red or blue box. In theory, that produces more moderate nominees and less polarized general elections. That was the theory. The reality has been messier. Because what the jungle primary actually does in a deep blue state like California is sometimes lock one party out of the general election entirely. If 3 strong Democrats split the Democratic vote and 1 Republican consolidates the Republican vote, you might still get a Democrat versus Republican showdown. But if 2 Democrats pull ahead and the Republican field is fractured, Republicans can find themselves shut out of the November ballot for a major statewide race. No nominee, no champion, nothing. And that is exactly the knife edge California is sitting on right now in this governor's race. 2 Democrats and 1 Republican, all bunched up, all fighting for those 2 slots. The Republican needs to hold on. One of those Democrats needs to slip. And the margins, according to NPR, are tight enough that nobody can call it. So let's talk about what's actually going on behind the scenes here, because this isn't just a vote count. This is a strategy war that's been playing out for months, and most voters never even saw the chess moves. When you have a jungle primary, the math changes everything. In a normal closed primary, a Democrat just has to be more popular than other Democrats. A Republican just has to beat other Republicans. Simple. But in California, a Democrat has to worry about other Democrats stealing their lane and also about whether a Republican is sneaking past them into second place. Every candidate is fighting on 2 fronts at once. That's why you see weird tactical behavior in these races. Candidates spending money attacking members of their own party, parties quietly pressuring some of their own people to drop out so the vote doesn't fragment. Endorsements that look strange from the outside but make perfect sense when you understand the math. The whole thing is a game of don't split the vote, and the people who play it best are the ones who survive to November. And here's where it gets really interesting. In a race this close, with 2 Democrats and 1 Republican fighting for 2 slots, every single vote becomes a strategic weapon. A Democratic voter who really wants to make sure a Republican doesn't make the general election might vote tactically for whichever Democrat is polling stronger, even if that's not their favorite candidate. A Republican voter, knowing their candidate is the underdog, might rally hard just to make sure they don't get locked out. Independents become kingmakers. The whole electorate ends up playing 4-dimensional chess on a ballot that looks deceptively simple. And that's before you factor in California's mail-in ballot system, which means votes keep trickling in for days after Election Day. So when NPR reports the race is undecided, what they really mean is that the final result might not be clear for a while. Counties are still counting, ballots are still arriving. The order could shift. The lead could change hands. And that 1 Republican in the mix could either squeeze into second place or get edged out by the 2nd Democrat, depending on which way those late arriving ballots break. So what's the real story here? It isn't really about which specific candidate wins. It's about the system itself and what it's quietly doing to American politics, one state at a time. Because California isn't alone. Washington state uses a similar top 2 primary system. Louisiana has its own variation. Alaska went even further and combined it with ranked choice voting. There's a slow, quiet experiment happening across parts of the country where the old party primary is being replaced by something new, something that takes power away from party insiders and hands more of it to the general electorate, something that, depending on the year and the state, can either produce moderate consensus candidates or completely lock out one of the two major parties from a race. And every time one of these jungle primaries delivers a result that scrambles the normal red versus blue narrative, the debate flares up again. Is this system better? Is it fairer? Is it doing what voters were promised when they signed off on it? Or is it just trading one kind of distortion for another? Reasonable people genuinely disagree. Supporters say it forces candidates to talk to everyone, not just their base, and that's a healthy thing in a polarized country. Critics say it can effectively disenfranchise voters whose party gets locked out of the general election, and that's a serious problem in a democracy that's supposed to give every major political view a seat at the table. You can probably feel both arguments tugging at you a little. That's because both of them are kind of right. And the jungle primary, like a lot of clever political reforms, ends up being a trade-off rather than a solution. It fixes some problems and creates new ones, and depending on which problems you care about more, you'll land on a different side of the debate. But here's the part that should really stick with you. The race in California right now, with 2 Democrats and 1 Republican fighting for 2 general election slots, isn't a glitch in the system. It's the system working exactly the way it was designed to work. The voters of California chose this. They chose to throw all the candidates into one pool, to let the top 2 emerge regardless of party, and to live with whatever shakeout that produces. And sometimes that shakeout means a tight 3-way scramble, where the country has to wait days, maybe weeks, to know who's actually running in November. So while everyone refreshes the vote totals and watches the margins tighten, ask yourself this: is this what real Democratic competition looks like, raw and unpredictable, and a little uncomfortable? Or is it a reminder that the rules we set up to make politics fair always come with hidden costs we don't see until they show up on election night? Because the candidates in this race aren't just running against each other. They're running inside a system most Americans don't understand, that California voters built on purpose. And that's quietly reshaping what it means to win an election in a one-party state. And whoever finally claims those 2 spots when the counting is done, they didn't just win a primary, they survived an experiment. An experiment a lot of other states are watching very, very carefully. So the next time someone tells you a primary is just a primary, remember California. Remember the night the race for governor of the biggest state in the country ended with no clear winner, 3 candidates still standing, and a rule book most voters never read deciding who gets to fight for the future. That's not a broken election. That's the one California asked for.